Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. The holidays are approaching. It's a time for family, but we still make time for our Manga Monday reviews. And today I'm going to take a real quick look at the free comic book day edition of Usagi Yojimbo featuring Stan Sakai and Julie Sakai. So it's kind of like a family team up. Basically, this is a really sweet, straightforward story. So I'm not going to do an in depth review. But I'm just going to remind you again that Usagi Yojimbo rocks. And one of the special things about it is that Stan Sakai was bringing his love for Japanese cinema into comics. He's been doing it for 30 years. So he actually kind of preceded the manga boom. And so what I would like to suggest is if you're a weeb and you don't read a lot of Western comics, I think you should read Usagi Yojimbo because there are ways in which I think he gets Japanese storytelling and Japanese culture in maybe even in ways that a lot of modern manga don't, because he's looking back kind of like the roots of Japan, like the classical samurai era, the classical, samurai, and maybe like what I forget the Japanese term for it, but he watches a lot of like the rougher, more like wandering samurai or Ronin character movies, and a lot of his comics are very filmic. They have that really nice ambiance to them. So if you like Samurai Jack, if you kind of like anything with that sort of rich atmosphere, you'll really gel with him. If you've been reading Usagi Yojimbo, you will know that Julie Sakai, I think his daughter, has been drawing these really sweet little chibi parodies of Usagi Yojimbo, and usually she takes inspiration from one of the good old early Usagi Yojimbo stories, and she'll just draw a chibi character and kind of find a little it's the joke is that she's finding an adorable take or twisteroo on her father's work, and her father's work's a little bit more hard edge. Characters die. Usagi's chopping people in half, left and right. So it's a fun little contrast. Now this is just like a classic thing where he runs into a Tengu and goes into the chibi world, and the chibi world is all playful and adorable. There's some great gags here where they both think the other looks freakish, and I also love the gag that Chibi Usagi actually wins the fight, but because he's a little adorable G-rated character, he doesn't have a sword, he just has a wooden stick. But he's actually the better swordsman. And it's just like the classic thing where they kind of team up towards the end and they both learn something from each other, right? It's that classic two characters from another dimension meet and learn something from the experience story. Now, one of the other really neat things is that Sakai writes these really detailed cultural notes on his sources of inspiration. It's sort of like a really well-written Wikipedia article, basically, on some little aspect of Japanese culture that inspires him. So it's Japanese cultural history time. So it's neat. It's a fun comic. It's a neat blend of the sort of Western animal cartoon tradition and Japanese cinema tradition. So I like it artistically. I like it in terms of storytelling and the atmosphere of visual storytelling, building the mood, building the drama. It's just absolutely fantastic series. It was so fun to see. It's a really sweet thing that that the daughter and the father are gelling so well together. So just a neat little team up to get for them to bring the two characters together. So we're gonna continue our look at Anonymous Noise, one of my favorite shoujo romances, and I think in every review, I've kind of acknowledged that this is pretty cheesy or soap opera-y. Something I've said a lot on my channel is I don't like it. I never want to like something ironically. I don't want to hate something and then pretend to like it for the lulls. I kind of prefer the attitude of, if I know it's cheesy and I like it, that means there's something good underneath the cheesiness that I'm resonating with. And in fact, the cheesy aspect of it just becomes like added entertainment value. So if the weakness is some of the like emotional romance is really on the nose and really direct and in your face and really teenagery, that's also kind of the fun aspect of it, where these are teenage characters and they do dumb teenage things consistently. And the deeper part of it I think I'm resonating with is teenagers are being presented as sort of complex, naive young people who have these really powerful hopes and dreams and emotions that they can't control. And this comes exploding out in their music, and it comes exploding out in teenage romance. It's a pretty complicated set of multiple different love triangles, so I wouldn't recommend hopping in right away. That being said, Ryoko Fukuyama as a writer, I know she has a really good tendency of making sure she catches new people up a little bit to kind of like work you into it. If the romance isn't working for you, she'll frequently deliver rock and roll scenes for people who like the rock and roll stuff. She tries to make sure to like hit a real strong emotional beat once a chapter to kind of like remind you why you like these characters. So let's dive into it. So I've been on in the love triangle. I've been on Team Yuzu, the shorty, but Yuzu has lost the battle. Momo has come back into Alice's life, and Momo and Alice are dating, and they're adorably, stupidly adorable together. So it seems like my ship for Yuzu and Alice isn't going anywhere. But actually, this is one of the things I like is sometimes Ryoko will draw the love triangle out a little bit, but she also knows when to kind of like settle down and actually let the story advance a little bit. So she kind of drew out the Yuzu refusing to admit his feelings to Alice for a few volumes, but he finally manned up and admitted his feelings, but it was too late. Momo's with her, right? So what that means is rather than just Alice chasing Momo the entire time, now we get to see Alice and Momo together, and kind of the question is, do they work together? And they actually do seem to have like this really sweet, cute, young, stupid, and in love chemistry. And one of Alice's comedic character flaws is that she's not a good listener, and she's extremely blunt and direct. So she'll say stupid things without kind of like thinking them through, but she'll be really aggressive and blunt and direct about it. This is played for laughs, but it's also like a serious character flaw too, where not only is she not a good listener in like the funny scenes, her difficulty listening to other people, she's kind of like trapped in her own head, really, and she's not good at letting things go. She chased after Momo because she lost Momo. She didn't get any closure from that. The trauma of that kind of drove her to become a singer so she could find Momo again. And because she's young and stupid, what she hasn't figured out is that you can't have everything. You have to make a choice in life. And when you make a choice, the other possibility is gone forever. She wants to be with Momo and she wants to play music with Yuzu, but she's kind of too dumb to figure out that if she's with one guy, she can't be with the other guy. And being a guy, you can't bear to see the girl you're crushing on with another guy, right? So she's naive. She's sweetly naive, but her naivete is starting to kind of like come to a head in this chapter. Now, one thing I like is that she's very self-conscious and she thinks about her own character flaws. So she kind of figures out that she can't just trust on her boyfriend to read her mind. She's got to actually articulate her emotions to him. So after stewing in her own head about her fears for a little bit, she forces herself to own up to how she's feeling, kind of like why she's nervous, why she's upset. She basically owns up that she loves Momo. She hasn't told Momo she loves him yet, but she owns up that being in the band is a big, important part of her life, and she's sad for having lost her friend, Yuzu. Yuzu's off burying his father right now, and she's sad about that. The whole band is sad about that. So rather than let that build up into more and more jealousy and drama, she admits she admits how she's feeling to her boyfriend. That's nice and healthy stuff. Meanwhile, a new character gets introduced. Now, a new character getting introduced is sometimes pointed to by nerds as like a sign that the writer is out of ideas. I think it really works here because one of the strong things Ryoko does is as she's building up the main plot of the Nino, Yuzu, Momo love triangle, she has the secondary characters have romantic adventures too, and some of these are really well written and they keep you invested while you're kind of waiting to see what happens in the main love triangle. So one of these was the Haruyoshi Miyu love triangle, and that's resolved in the two of them getting together and being a really cute couple. Another subplot that I wasn't gelling with as much was Kuro, because Kuro was basically crushing on his brother's wife, and his brother's wife looks at him as like a cute little kid. She doesn't see him as a man or a threat at all, which is kind of like the ultimate simp put down, right? Like he has absolutely no game. And so a new girl comes in as a freshman, which is nice because you kind of get like that freshman upperclassman dynamic. They do a whole bunch of jokes about how cool it is to be called a senpai, and she's different. She's different than the other girls on the team in both her look and in her attitude. And Ryoko actually comments how she thought about bringing a boy into the group, and then she decided, no, if I bring in a girl, I'll get more opportunities. And she comments on like the character design, where I have a lot of long-haired girls, so let's have a short-haired girl. I have a lot of short girls, so let's have a tall girl. That's brilliant. Ryoko isn't the strongest in facial variety. A lot of her boys and girls have a similar face to one another, but you can tell she does do a lot of consideration about character separation. So that was a really neat idea. And Anne is the freshman's name. So because she's sort of attitudinally different than the girl, it also adds some more like comedic elements into it. And we're going to develop Kuro a bit. He's been a simp. Now Kuro has a chance to man up and go for a girl. That's great. I highlighted this because this is just Ryoko talking about her thinking process for character design, using the different details to distinguish her characters. Great stuff. Hinting at new stuff that's coming up in future volumes, doing the cute little doodles. She has a very good winsome personality for talking to her readers. Meanwhile, Yuzu's still away. The band's still struggling with that. Momo and Nino are having their just adorable little romance where at first they're together, but Momo isn't willing to call her his girlfriend in public. He finally starts doing that. Nino is feeling a little clingy, and she has, what's the word? She has issues where she doesn't get closure that often, so she's afraid of losing people in her life. I know there's a term for that, but it's escaping my mind. She's scared that Momo is going to leave her again, and she's going to be alone again. So she's getting a little clingy. He's being kind of cutesy bootsy with her and putting his glasses on her and smooching her, right? Trying to be a reassuring boyfriend. And again, I like that she has like an internal monologue. She realizes she's being kind of clingy and needy, and she doesn't like that about herself. She wants to kind of like work through that problem, but she doesn't know how right away. And music is one of the avenues that she uses to express all of this pent-up emotion she has burning inside her. And Ryoko comments about all this cool stuff like visiting real Japanese rock locations to get reference footage for her and her assistants. Talks about like how she actually got into rock and roll while doing this series and wanting to pour that emotion into her manga, which is something she does in the rock and roll sequences. Just another neat thing is that it's interesting to me that comics are so popular in Japan. It actually crosses over into like the rock and roll scene. Like the normies or the non-comic nerds in Japan still get into comics basically because once a comic starts getting popular, everybody, like, could you imagine if they were doing like a Marvel Comics rock and roll band and the rock and roll band was actually a hip young band? That would be so weird. Every time music or rock and roll is referenced, the drawing style changes from kind of like a simple comedic drawing style to a big, impactful drawing style, using lots of space, using lots of abstract, swooshy dooshies to represent the importance of that. Basically, the recurring theme is that always when Nino sings or practice sings or is preparing for rock and roll, that her emotional bonkers romance confusion is poured into her song. Now, because I think it's attachment issues, because Nino has these attachment issues, because Nino is afraid to let anything go. Her whole life she's been chasing after Momo, and she finally got him. And now that she has Momo, she doesn't know what to do next. Her whole personality was defined. Her life goal was defined by getting Momo. She gets him, and now she doesn't know what she has left anymore, and it's affecting her music. She doesn't feel confident in her singing anymore, and her singing was something that was really important to her, probably like the most important thing in her life. So, will this create a rift between her and Momo? And who comes back? Yuzu, and he's grown a few inches. And what's interesting is Yuzu has been a simp, basically. He's been pining for Nino from afar. He's been supporting her with his music. He's been on the band with her. He's been composing beautiful music for his muse. And he waited too long to admit his feelings. And now that he's back, He's back with a vengeance. He wants to take Nino away from Momo. Oh gosh. So if you're in Team Momo, now you're really going to be hating Yuzu because now he's the antagonist. Or if you're rooting for Yuzu, now he's like the underdog. This is just so teenagery and romantic and absolutely bonkers. But I kind of like, I like a lot of things happening here. He's grown taller by a few inches physically. He's also grown into someone who's maybe more of a threat to. I also like the gag that he's still shorter than Nino, even though he's taller. He's still shorter than her. But he's changed as a person. He's sort of worked out. So he's buried his father. He's worked out some issues in his life, and now that he's back to shake things up. He's a troublemaker now, but as he's sort of working through these emotions, he realizes that he has to be a good friend to Nino. So this is always like the problem for them, is that they're really good friends. They're actually probably a better fit for each other personality-wise than Nino and Momo are. They have like an artistic connection where they make beautiful music together, literally. And so sometimes Yuzu has to put aside his dumb, crushing feelings so that he can give Alice the support she needs from a musical standpoint. He's basically like her music coach. So it's a nice little dynamic. Hopping ahead, there's just a great line. There's a great line where he and Momo directly, give each other pushback. Oh, that's the bell. Got to get back to my seat right next to Alice. Bye-bye. That's great. It's a different dimension of his character. Formerly, he's been a little simpy, supportive guy in the friend zone. Now he's basically come back as an aggressive and assertive guy. I like this change. It's not a change in his character. It's a development in his character. So the love triangle seemingly got resolved, but people's feelings aren't over. It ain't over till the wedding bells, I guess. And I also kind of want to highlight. I just love Ryoko Fukuyama's commentary. She's a very charming. She's very charming in how she talks about her work and her fans. The Anonymous Noise anime is scheduled to begin airing shortly. I've seen the first few episodes. It's very, very abridged, but the music is fantastic. And I actually found out that Ryoko was involved in writing the lyrics for some of the songs. So it's neat. I would recommend the manga more than the anime, but if you really like the manga and are kind of interested in the musical interpretation of it, I was charmed by the music. It fit with the emotion that the story was going for, I think. And it's no surprise that Ryoko was actually involved in writing the lyrics for it to kind of connect it with her story. So a very strange Japanese rock and roll slash manga crossover phenomenon. It's utterly fascinating. All right, that's Volume 12 and Usagi Yojimbo. 2 recommends. With that, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Catch you later.